Peter King, senior writer for Sports Illustrated. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Peter, we talked during the show about Greg Williams and him being reinstated, and my position is he's paid his debt to the league. He's paid his proverbial debt to society. We should all move on. What's your take on Greg Williams being back in the NFL?
I feel the same way. Now, I think there are two issues. Number one, will the Tennessee Titans, will they be better on defense because Greg Williams is there? The past statistics when he has worked with Jerry Gray, the current defensive coordinator, suggest that they have been a very good team together. And Jerry Gray alone is not nearly as good as Jerry Gray with Greg Williams. Now that's the plus for doing it. The minus for doing it is, let's say you want to go out and get free agents. How many free agents are going to be excited about going to a place that hired a guy who said about Frank Gore, kill the head, even though it was probably a figure of speech and all that other stuff? Clearly he's a guy who is seen, I think, right now probably negatively, not only for running that program, the Pay for Performance and Bounty program with the Saints, but also for talking so openly about it to the league after he was caught. So, I'm not blaming him for doing that. I'm just saying that I think in the culture of a locker room that there are going to be players who are going to have a lot of questions about whether if they have a choice, whether they're going to want to go play on a team that hires Greg Williams.
Greg Williams' hiring kind of closes the book on Bountygate. If you had to look back, and you are looking back on winners and losers as a result of Bountygate, who would you put in either category?
Winners. I don't know who won. I really don't know who won other than the teams who had a lesser New Orleans team to play in 2012. Those are the winners, teams that played a team that was without a kind of a Parcells-like overarching father figure to everybody in the organization, coach like Sean Payton was. So, clearly the winners are the teams that played the Saints last year. The losers are particularly, just for 2012, community of New Orleans, a team that underachieved drastically compared to probably what they should have. And I think, the Saints are going to have a lot of adjustments to make this offseason. I think there's a good chance that they're going to have some cap casualties, guys, and guys they don't re-sign in free agency. And I'll use an umbrella, and I'll say that, I think there's a good chance that they're going to have to let Jermon Bushrod go, and they're not going to be able to re-sign him. Now, he's an above-average NFL left tackle. To replace him is going to, you're going to not be as good at left tackle if you let Jermon Bushrod go. So, I think that the reverberations are going to be felt for a while.
Talking to Peter King, senior writer for Sports Illustrated and Football Night in America on NBC here on the Dan Patrick Show. Peter, we got a poll question that's NFL related today, and Perloff, read him the question.
If you could sign one quarterback to a 6-year contract, who would it be? Andrew Luck, Russell Wilson, Kaepernick, Flacco, RG3, or Cam Newton?
Probably Luck, and maybe Russell Wilson second. I just think that over a long period of time, a guy who, even though Andrew Luck was hit, this is a great stat from Pro Football Focus, Andrew Luck was dropped behind the line of scrimmage, both sacks and knockdowns, more than any quarterback in football last year. But I think part of that is the fact that Bruce Arians' passing offense was having him go deep a lot, and the fact that he was he basically was working behind a bad offensive line last year. And so, look, I don't think anything is given in this game, but I think he'll be throwing shorter. I think he's a bigger man than Russell Wilson is, obviously, by about 5 or 6 inches. And so I probably would take Luck, but honestly, I'd be happy with any of those guys you mentioned.
Peter, Jim Harbaugh went on a local radio station in San Francisco and expressed his frustration over that non-call at the end of the Super Bowl with Michael Crabtree in the end zone. How difficult is it going to be for a guy like Jim Harbaugh to let go of this, and how quickly does he have to do it?
Oh, I don't think there's any hurry. There's no hurry. There's not any games for 225 days, so I'm sure that he can have his mourning period, and he will. I talked to Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, yesterday, and he was very philosophical about all of that stuff. What are you going to do? It's over. There's nothing you can do. And I would just say this. I do think that games take on the personality of how they're officiated. Some games, some things, crews let players get away with stuff. I talked to Jimmy Smith right after this game, the cornerback who is accused of the mugging on Michael Crabtree. And one of the points he made was, hey, I was playing the game they were letting us play. You know, and this was unspoken by him, but I'm sure that if they were calling a lot of contact fouls 6 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, which is where the majority of the contact between he and Crabtree occurred, so, 5, 6, 7 yards, but mostly I'd say between 6 and 7. So it's not far beyond the 5-yard bump zone. And I think that's the way the officials were letting people play the entire game. So to me, if you call pass interference on that play, what that says to me is you missed 5 calls during the game as an officiating crew where you should have either called offensive or defensive pass interference.
Any expected rule changes, Peter, this offseason?
Oh, there will be rule tweaks. I don't think there's going to be anything really big, Chris. I think one of the big things they're going to look at this offseason is enforcing the rule that Roger Goodell and the competition committee really wants to enforce, and that is mandatory use of helmets with the latest technology, mandatory use of pads on players who, kept trying to get away with wearing, knee and thigh pads this year. Because I think that the NFL is now on record, and you can see they're being sued by 4,000 players and or wives and or estates of deceased players for not caring enough about head injuries. So the NFL is going to go way the other way, I believe, starting this off season in trying to enforce some of the things that Goodell has been very adamant about. And I think the most important one that they need to enforce right now, other than HGH testing, which it's a joke that it doesn't occur right now, and it needs to occur. But other than HGH testing, I think the mandatory use of helmets with the latest technology is something that the league absolutely has to push.
Peter, 2 quarterbacks in the news right now. Michael Vick has that $3 million roster bonus paid to him, or the Eagles are going to pay it to him. And Joe Flacco, with what happens to him. What's your prediction on what's going to happen with both those quarterbacks this offseason?
I think Chip Kelly is going to try to convince Vick to come back and play for him in the most exciting offense in the NFL for less than $15 million. It's only fair. It's ridiculous to pay Michael Vick $15 million, and I'm sure deep down Vick knows it. He hasn't performed like a $10 million player, never mind $15 million player. But he could be very good in this offense, obviously. The very quick strike, mobile quarterback, 88 plays a game type offense that Chip Kelly wants to run. As far as Flacco goes, he's going to play for the Ravens next year. He'll either play under the exclusive rights franchise tag, which means that technically he'd be a free agent, but he can't sign with anybody else, and the Ravens would guarantee him 20-point-something million to play this year while they try to work out a long-term contract. I think the Ravens' cap situation is so muddled right now that they're going to try everything they can to work out a long-term deal with him where the first 2 years of the contract in a flat cap time, 2013 and 2014, where the cap will be right around 121 or 122 million. They're going to try to work it out so that they can have advantageous numbers in both those years rather than paying, rather than giving him, huge cap dollars, $20 million in 2013. That would damage their ability to try to keep some of their other guys, especially like Paul Kruger and Daniel Ellerbe on defense.
Peter, the draft is a couple of months away still, but there is not the same number of impact quarterbacks this year as there was last year. Is there a quarterback out there that you feel like, even though he's not getting the same type of hype, is going to be able to step in next year and be a contributor for someone?
You know what, Chris? I don't have any idea because I've done 5 minutes of work on the draft, and I'm not a big college football watcher. I think the two names that are fascinating and I'll be looking into a lot are going to be Geno Smith. I mean, they met in the Pinstripe Bowl. Geno Smith and Ryan Nassib, the West Virginia and Syracuse quarterbacks, because there are people in the NFL, those are very polarizing guys. Geno Smith has not played well in things like weather or, as the season went on this year, he really fell down a lot in the eyes of some scouts. And then Nassib, who I think played in the type of offense, the type of hurry-up Patriots/Chip Kelly offense at Syracuse, and was very good. His whole problem, from what I'm being told, is that, his arm isn't the best, and so it's not going to be like you're looking at Kaepernick and Russell Wilson, mobile guys who, can throw the ball downfield very accurately and very deep. So, but I think those two guys are two guys who we'll all be concentrating a lot on in the next 3 months.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, Chris, take care.
That's Peter King, senior writer from Sports Illustrated.